Welcome to the Movement PT Coffee Cast, where we sit down and talk about physical therapy, health, and whatever else comes to mind during our coffee-infused conversations. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Movement PT Coffee Cast. My name's Dalton, and with me, as always, is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
Doing excellent, man. Got my cup of coffee here. I'm ready to go. How about you?
I'm good. I'm ready to go as well. I've noticed that you've trimmed the beard, though. It is no longer savage mode. It's more professional mode.
Yeah. Well, the beard has a mind of its own, remember? So
yes.
When it wants to be trimmed, then it's time to be trimmed.
All right. I like it. It looks good, man.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to get into the episode this week. We're doing an interview. We're interviewing Frank Benedetto. He's got a long resume, so I'm going to try and keep it nice and short. But he's a physical therapist, strength and nutrition coach. He's a business owner. He's owned multiple clinics. I know he's doing a new thing now with Counter-Strike combat sports, working with UFC athletes. So we got a lot of awesome stuff to talk about on this episode. So we're going to bring Frank in. Frank, how are you doing today?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem.
I figured you'd want me to have a coffee, so I
yes,
pretended to make a coffee, and it's actually water because I wasn't going to drink the shitty hotel coffee. So
that's fair. That's fair. I appreciate
that. I had to
that.
have a cup to fit in.
Yeah,
I wanted to fit in.
Yeah, we won't tell anybody.
Yeah. All right. And my last name's pronounced Benedetto. It's okay.
No.
Everybody does it.
And I meant to ask you before we started recording. It's like my worst nightmare is messing up people's name, and I messed it up.
It's all good. All good. I'm used to it.
Shame on you, Dalton.
I know. Frank, why don't you just kick it off and do a little intro about yourself? Maybe give our listeners a little bit of background.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm going to go all the way back to high school, like why I became a PT in the beginning. So I had broken my femur. Had a phenomenal recovery. First day PT, came home, said, I knew what I want to do for the rest of my life. Fast forward a couple of years, year between undergraduate and graduate school, I had a torn labrum and in my shoulder, and I went to PT that in retrospect sucked. And I didn't know it sucked because the people were nice. And I ended up having a surgery that I know I didn't really need, because I just didn't try to get stronger. And I was always a pretty weak person in upper body. Surgery failed, got over tightened me, did a labral shift, like an outdated surgery for the time. And I went back to the same shitty PT that was a nice person because I didn't know they were shitty. And I never recovered, so that's my external rotation. That's my internal. I have 10 degrees of internal rotation. This is 15 years later. And then the next year I go to school and I'm like, what the fuck? Why this is what's supposed to happen? How come that didn't happen to me? And I liked the people that were trying to take care of me. I was so confused. And I was like, but this is what's I was supposed to get stronger. And then they were supposed to stretch me and they were supposed to teach me all this stuff. And it never happened. So I was like, all right, maybe I guess that place was bad. And then as I started to explore the PT profession, I was like, oh my God, this is throughout, this is the majority of our profession. Unfortunately, in my opinion, is really nice people who mean well, who are either who are incompetent, either based off of their learning style of not progressing anything since they've graduated, or from being trapped in a system that doesn't promote the ability to actually take care of people. And it was that moment that was what shaped me and made me who I am as a clinician.
Yeah, let's dive into that right off the bat. I think it's a good thing to talk about is what do you think it is that leads to those scenarios with clinicians or people that are maybe not approaching it the best way? Do you think it's just lack of education, our education system is letting us down? Is it just maybe ignorance on the clinician's part in terms of progressing with the times with the research? What do you think it is in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% all of those. I don't think there's one that, can be attributed to more, other than the monetization strategy of physical therapy. So the only way, so when I was younger, I thought I was hell bent on changing the profession, and I still am. But the way I thought I was going to do it was purely through education. So I was like, I'm going to teach everybody. I'm going to do this. And so I started finding mentors around the country, and I became double board certified. And I got credentialed as hell just to continually push the limits of my knowledge. And what I started to realize was that unless we change the monetization strategy of how PTs earn income, that nothing else can change. So if we're trapped in this insurance, medical doctor driven model, it can't allow for the right thing to actually be done, because it's impossible to make enough money in that ecosystem, given like the latest research. So if you implement truly what I believe is the latest research from strength and conditioning, the pain science realm, like all from every segment, it doesn't match up with the actual strategy that most of the profession is using.
And so did some of these things lead you to starting your clinic, Provere Health? And what, like, when you started that, like, what were you trying to do differently?
So Provere Health was our first business that we owned. So it was me, my business partner, Dr. Cedric Haddad, who's also a doctor of physical therapy. And that, like, the big thing that we changed there was direct to consumer. So this was 2015. And we were basically like, fuck medical doctors. We're not doing this anymore. And we need to go straight to customers and get them consuming PT in a way that like really wasn't happening at the time, and do it on a mass scale. Where the flaw was, though, we were still out of network. So out of network physical therapy is like one huge step better than being in network, because you have a lot more freedom and you could earn a lot more money, but it's still connected to the insurance system. It always was viewed that it was like kind of untouchable, because it was like in this weird hybrid of like cash insurance area, until 2017, when the governor started putting arbitrary limits on maximum reimbursement of out-of-network benefits. So at that point, our monetization strategy that we had thought was going to be untouchable started to be attacked, and I found myself no longer trying to innovate for the client. I was trying to work on my business to offset these cuts to maintain the quality that we had, and that really wasn't fun.
Yeah. And in terms of like building like the principles and the values around your clinic, how did you guys differ like within that insurance model from like maybe some of the care that you had gotten before?
Oh, we did, full hour evaluations. I made sure that no clinician ever was allowed to adopt one philosophy. So the evaluation technique we used was, how do I figure out what this person needs? Like what philosophy or clinical approach did I learn that matches with this person's psychographic, demographic, like, goals, their actual injury history. Like, what do I have to match with this? And I gave every clinician autonomy as far as their schedule goes. So if they needed more time, it was they didn't have to ask me. If they needed 45 minutes hands-on with somebody, it was like, just book it out. It's fine. And everybody got individualized treatment geared specifically to their goals. So there was never this like focus on like just range of motion. It was always like, okay, we have to get you back to triathlons. We have to get you back to running. We have to get you back to some sort of goal.
I feel like goals is a huge thing overall, like, and I think, because when I was in school, I had some difficult, situations with placements where I felt like I was kind of limited. So that at that point, that was kind of my advice for like younger students, was like, if they're in a similar situation, is to kind of focus on the goal. Because if you have that in mind, it's hard to justify not striving for it, but I like that there's like that opens up so many different ways that you can sort of achieve those goals, and it's not just sort of one approach. Yeah.
I think that unfortunately right now, when like almost going back to the original question here, we have the insurance model and now we have the cash model. And in my opinion, there's too many cash PT clinics that are opening that are just kind of glorified massage therapy clinics, where the value proposition is not actually getting to people's goals. It's, joint mobs and massage, which I'm not against by any means, but to make that like the core product and hinge your value proposition on hands-on time is actually, in my opinion, taking a step back in our profession. That we need to be the person that, like, when somebody says, I can't run, they need to know, like, oh, I go see my doctor of physical therapy to get me to be able to run. And then the tool that might use is, depending on what clinic or what style you go with, it might be a joint mob, it might be corrective exercise, it might be voodoo band, who cares? But as long as it's in the direction of that person's goal, then you're starting to create a brand based off of that result, not the actual technique that you're using.
Yeah, because you're shifting the expectations there too, from coming in to get a certain treatment to coming in to achieve something you want to achieve.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things I've been trying to tell anybody in PT right now is that we need a rebrand. Like, the physical therapy profession we all need to just rebrand and actually stop using the word physical therapy. We need to use the skill sets that we've learned as doctors of physical therapy, but we need to drop this completely service oriented frame of mind and business model and start talking about the outcomes that we're actually going to actually do. So, like, think of like financial planning or like wealth management. Like, these are, when you're advertised these things, you're advertised like save for your retirement, like be able to vacation more, imagine not having to work 3 jobs, all this other stuff. They're not saying like monthly budgeting, like they're not just saying we are monthly budgeters. We're going to help you monthly budget and save, like that's, so physical therapists, we're basically constantly talking about like what we do and such, less about what we can do for the person. In my opinion, we need to completely rebrand that.
Yeah, I like that thought. How, like, that's obviously a big task to take on. How do you think we do that? Like, what steps do you think we take as a profession to start to transition to those things?
I think what I'm trying to do with Counter-Strike is an example of that. So I'm trying to be a leader by doing, instead of, just preaching this. I'm preaching and also then saying, well, this is my interpretation of how to do this. I'm not saying the only way or the right way, but it's my interpretation of how to do this. So with Counter-Strike, I'm 100% leveraging everything I've learned as a doctor of physical therapy, our medical background, and I'm going to use that to really enhance the lives and the performance of amateur and pro fighters. If you look at my bio link, if you look at the website, there's not one mention of physical therapy as like a service. And it doesn't even really call me a physical therapist. I say I'm a double board certified doctor of physical therapy. And then that's like the last mention. I'm not mentioned as like physical therapist that in any other way. And all I'm focusing on is how do I keep fighters healthier, stronger, and making weight more often? Because those are like the 3 things that they actually care about. And I'm using my skill sets to help deliver that.
Yeah, that's something I really noticed about just your resume and stuff. Like, I really appreciate the fact that, you're doing a lot of different things, not just like physio specifically, and not necessarily branding yourself as a physiotherapist, but using those skills. And I think that's huge, because then you're going into those other fields that might have some idea of what physiotherapy is that they've had in the past that might not be what we're trying to push it as now, let's say, as like a new type of physiotherapy. So I think it's good that you're out there doing that. And I think more people in our profession need to like step out into those realms and use those skill sets in different areas, like such as MMA or even other athletics, right?
Yeah. I think like people need to niche up and start focusing on what that niche needs and not what they can offer. So I do, a really like an unadvertised business coaching thing on the side, just like as a small, when people ask me questions, if they're working on an exciting enough project and the personality fit is there, I'll take them on as a mentor and take them through, just series of like thought exercises and very tangible, worksheet type things to help formulate their ideas. And one of the things I always end up doing is saying, like, what niche do you care about? Then 3 years, 5 years, you're not going to get tired. Like, you can't imagine being tired. Like for me, it's the UFC and traveling with them and just getting to know these fighters. I'm so invested in their personal success that, like, it drives me to Monday make my product better, because Shane, who fought 2 weeks ago, is like providing for his daughter through fighting. Like, this is like a fucking Rocky movie for real. Like, this is insane. So it drives me to make my product even better and deliver those results, which is only going to make me money in the process. So if your passion is runners, if your passion is Pilates, if your passion is the less common things that I just listed, and more towards like the unique niches, like what I'm choosing, I think that's really the key. That's the first step.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that you've you're clearly passionate about this area that you're in. But what I'm curious about is, how did you get into helping UFC fighters?
Yeah, great, crazy story. And it's like, I think the quote to summarize the situation is, luck is preparation meeting opportunity. And, I don't really believe in luck, but I do believe that, like, you actively have to be constantly searching for opportunities. And that's what most people interpret as luck. So I'm out to lunch with Nick Soriano, who's a high school wrestler who just won the NCAAs. I've been working with him since he was in early high school years. I see him at lunch, and Jimmy Rivera, who at the time was number 14th ranked UFC fighter, is like sitting behind us. I have no idea who he is. And Nick asked me something about his hip. I was like, yeah, you do this, this, and this. And Jimmy turns and he's like, hey, you work on hips? That was the exact quote. I was like, yeah, sure do, man. And he's like, I'm always looking for ways to keep my hips looser. I was like, give me your number. I'll get you in tomorrow. He says, all right, my name's Jimmy. Get his number. I was like, all right, bro, I'll hook you up. I get him in. I start off every evaluation with the same question. Before I get started, I'd like to get to know you a little bit more. So tell me about yourself. And he's like, I'm the number 14th ranked UFC fighter. And I was just like, play it fucking cool. Play it cool. No big deal. No big deal. And then I helped him, and he basically said that I had come up with the same exact movement pattern issues that the UFC's docs said, but the docs didn't actually like tell him what to do about it. And then from there, I just started gaining the trust of more of his teammates. Became the director of performance for the Tiger Schulman's pro team, and the rest is history.
Wow. What is it like working with that population? Like, what are some of the unique sort of, I guess, challenges that you might face?
I guess the biggest challenge is there's so much I want to revamp about, like, a fight camp or their entire training philosophy, that you have to be extremely, emotionally intelligent about the way you go about introducing things, especially if somebody's been a successful fighter. They've gotten to a certain point in their career saying, like, well, this is how I ate, and this is how I trained, these are the sprints I've done. And you can't just come in and be like, well, I know what I'm talking about, I'm a doctor. Like, it's got to be baby steps, and be like, hey, try this on the treadmill Friday, and just let me know how you feel. Or like, hey, have you ever worn a heart rate monitor? Try this out. And then slowly but surely you start to get questions. Then from there you could start to influence. And now I'm at a unique point where, like, this week, for example, is the first time I've ever programmed the nutrition pre-weigh-ins. So with Julio Arce, I worked with a meal prep company and basically had food shipped to the hotel specifically created to make his weight cut as easy and healthy as possible. And I'm pretty excited to say that, like, the UFC PI for their Performance Institute is now going to use that as like a beta test for other fighters. So there's a lot of common sense things that I'm implementing, but there's just like so many of them. You have to figure out how to implement it in a system.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like how you say about you have to be careful how you navigate those situations. Sounds very similar to just a normal, like, clinical session, like that you would see even with someone that's not like a UFC fighter. I feel like we do that often as physios, trying to navigate those situations. So it's just maybe on a bit more of a grander scale with the people that you're working with.
Right. Yeah, I agree. There's parallels.
But is it like, do you feel sometimes pressured, given that they have such high stakes?
Yeah. I mean, the pressure is insane. When I give somebody, like a lot of them didn't believe in weightlifting or strength training at all. So in martial arts, it was always like, it'll make you slower. It'll make you too big. It'll make it harder to cut weight. It's actually easier to cut weight if you have more muscle mass. And as you get older and as you go through the usage curve, you get weaker in your career, especially if you've been fighting for 10 years. So in my opinion, it's like a non-negotiable. You have to be strength training, especially if you're going to compete at these high levels. But, getting somebody on a barbell for the first time is scary, because I'm like, if they get fucking hurt, it's on me. And like, this is how this person provides. This person's getting their first top 10 ranked fight. So there's definitely a layer that's you have to be so careful about what you introduce when and to who. So there's different fighters that I introduce certain things to, and I won't introduce to another one.
Is their learning curve just like super steep?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually that's the best part of it, is I'll like put a heart rate monitor on somebody and like, just tweak their conditioning so that they're hitting different energy systems. And 2 weeks later, they're like, bro, I'm not getting tired in the cage. And I'm just like, yep. Yeah. Same thing with strength. Like I have them doing such basic stuff because that's what's appropriate for them. They're elite athletes, but they're novice lifters. So I have them, trap bar deadlifting. I have them doing box squats. Those are pretty much their 2 primary lower lifts for months, because there's not a reason to. They're going up like, 10, 20 pounds every couple of weeks naturally. And I'm going to leave them there until they plateau, and then I'll introduce complexity when I need to. But so many trainers, I think this is where the leverage of the DPT comes in. So many strength coaches, they introduce variety for the sake of variety. They introduce variety, in my opinion, for selfish reasons, to make it more interesting, or they feel pressured to make it more interesting, almost like kind of like an influence of CrossFit. Like, oh, we have to do something different. Like, no, we're gonna trap our deadlifts every Tuesday until I feel like there's a reason to not. And of course we're fluctuating, we're periodizing things based off of fights and things like that. But it is pretty amazing the learning curve that they have.
Yeah. That simplicity is interesting, because I mean, if we take it back to just like what I experience in clinic, and I just work in like a general population clinic, I sometimes feel that that pressure to maybe like change something or make something a little bit more interesting, because people come in sometimes expecting that as seeing a physio, but then like you realize, like if you just stick with the basics, oftentimes if you just stick with that for a longer period of time, you notice that they actually have better outcomes when they do that, rather than trying to change everything up or making it kind of sexy, I guess, for a lack of a better term.
Yep.
How do you like maybe help people stick to that simple plan and not feel like the pressure to change up stuff so often?
Educate often. So I 100% had the same philosophy as a PT. And essentially what I would say is, like, at the end of the eval, I'd be like, all right, so we understand what variables we need to move. And what I'm going to tell you is that we could do this in 2 different ways. We could hammer those top 3 variables, make significant changes, and then move on to the next set of variables that we choose. Or we could take 6, 10 variables and all move them very slowly. In my experience, we need to move one variable very heavily. So if they're a mobility case and you truly believe that, like, shoulder mobility, and had some sort of, crazy past trauma, like, I'm going to go so all in on like the 3 variables that I want to move, that I'm going to hit it all of that. Yet I might use variety to get that. So they might feel like they're doing something different, but if I truly believe I need to get back external rotation, they might do it in standing. They might do it with active resistance. They might do it in laying on their side. They might do it 5 different ways. But in reality, all I'm doing is actually hitting external rotation.
Yeah, I feel like where the skill comes as a PT or a strength coach is taking things that don't seem sexy and making them appealing and valuable and valued by like the athlete or the client. Because, like, I mean, I have this all the time. Sometimes I even like feel bad if I just take someone with like, for example, like, some type of forearm tendinopathy, and you just increase the load, and you're like,
right.
But wait a minute, we've said that we were going to do this from the beginning, and you have to like really stick with it and reinforce that, like, this is what we need to do. You don't need to make it overly complex. In fact, that might actually take you a step backwards.
Yeah. And this actually hits a nerve on two sides. Remind me to go revisit the sexy thing. So, but on the other side, there's a wrong way that people are doing this, and strength coaches that, like, because that's really more of my competition right now. There's a few, and some of them are taking down, like, MMA trainer of the year status, which is going to be mine in 2 years. Call my shot. And the way they're getting that is by making simple things sound so much more complex. Mm-hmm. I have a friend and a strength coach. Her name is Asia, that is helping me and getting involved with Counter-Strike. And we send each other these like screenshots of these posts where it's like, somebody doing literally external rotation 90 degrees, and the caption something like, dynamic effort at the horizontal plane increases punching power by improving the eccentric, then the concentric, pure human movement of the shoulder rotation kinematics. And I'm like, I want to take the phone, smash it over my head. And then there's like 800 likes, 20 comments saying like, oh my God, thank you so much, and all this other fanboy shit. And the key there though is that we need to start marketing. And I know I'm going to go off like a way tangent here, but like the rebrand I'm talking about is we do need to move one step towards that without selling our soul. So the whole sexy thing, which we have to use a different word, but the whole making it more appealing to consumers' actual wants is what we need to do. And there is a way to market. And I really think that that's what I'm shooting for as a lesson for all PTs in Counter-Strike, is that hopefully as I continue to market and learn to market even better, that what I'm representing is a step towards this guy who's dolling it up, but I'm also just being real. Like I'm actually just, I'm just explaining the basics, but in a way where it's like, man, I got to do that. If I want to have a fight career, I have to do this. And I want this guy to teach me, because he clearly has an understanding. I can't remember who posted it. It might have been you guys, somebody else, but it said like, be more like Neil deGrasse. Is that you guys?
No, I did see someone post that though.
So Neil deGrasse is the astrophysics guy who's he takes the world's most complicated topics and makes them easy to understand for regular people like us. So like we need to be more like Neil deGrasse and less like these other people that are making things like complicated for self-promoting reasons.
So what you're saying is make simple great again.
Yeah.
Make simple great again. Absolutely. Get the hat. Let's do it.
I think it's a good point though, because those people that are promoting the complexity and stuff, they're out there going hard on that, right? And they're like pushing it. Whereas
we're all in.
Whereas we're some people are like, we have these people that are very intelligent and making simplicity great and all of that stuff, but we're not pushing it. It's like almost like afraid to market, or maybe it's lack of know-how. I mean, that's probably a part of it too as well, because we don't really get taught how to do that.
Right. It's afraid to market. I'm going to close this blind here because I'm increasingly glowing as the podcast goes on. I'm talking to you guys from UFC Rochester, so it's a hotel. Better? Yeah, there we go. So I was afraid to market. Like one of my main things I regret about Provere is that I was afraid to market. I didn't market myself as a PT. I didn't market the brand hard enough. I marketed hard inside the local facilities we're in, but we didn't market to the mainstream. And there's such a ego battle, like a year's worth of like, oh, I don't want to be that guy, but I don't really want to be who I am now still anymore on like social media presence wise. And it took a lot of reading. Seth Godin is the go-to for me as far as marketing goes, trust-based, permission-based marketing. Yet he tells you like you need to make people feel the fear of missing out in a healthy and appropriate way. So in my opinion, a fighter who's starving himself this week and then eating like crazy after he weighs in because he made it, like he should have the fear of missing out that he's going to lose to one of my guys, because my guys ate like perfection the entire week, had energy because they ate the right foods. they rehydrated properly using like electrolytes and ate perfectly for 36 hours leading up to the fight. Like, he should look at my marketing and be like, fuck, how do I not do this? How could I not do this? That's where we have to start moving towards.
So going off like the whole marketing thing, Frank, I know you made a transition from like your insurance-based clinic with Provere to more of a cash-based model. So what was that transition like, and why did you take that step like in your career?
It all started with those cuts back in 2017, where we had been so passionate about reinvesting our profits into our clinicians and into our clients that these external cuts made that difficult and then impossible. So we had like a really torturous year where we weren't sure if it was the best thing to do to try to actually evolve Provere into this new model. And honestly, selling it wasn't even a question. I like mocked the people, the owners that sold. It just goes to show how sometimes perspective flips. And we tried a couple of experiments, and it was one of those things where I learned firsthand that businesses take on like a life of their own, and they become their own animal. And the effort, money, and time that it would have taken to change Provere, which was like a distinct entity that had years of existence, and clients that were used to the certain product, and clinicians that were used to the way that product was delivered, and gyms that hosted us who were used to it, it would have been a massive, most likely profitless transition to evolving to the way I believe the future of PT is going to work. So we took a look around. There's a real market. There's a value in the market to sell it to other people who continue the insurance model, and we made sure we weeded out all the evil ones, like professional physical therapy, like all the ones that we knew that there would be no way the legacy would continue on. We weeded out, and we ended up selling. It was a really hard decision. It was really, really hard. But what I ended up transitioning to, and actually I do have a cash practice in the city that's actually pure physio. So I do that 2 days a week. Also inside martial arts school, so of two of the UFC fighters that I work with. So I do still have my hand in like traditional treatment. And, what I did there is actually, I love evaluations. I love the process. It is mentally very rewarding for me. I feel like that's my primary skill set, and our skill set as a DPT is the diagnostic and programming perspective, meaning I think we need to embody, like, I know you need stronger external rotation or something, and here's how I recommend you personally to start and progress that based off of your sport. I don't necessarily believe that I need to be the one to monitor that precisely. So what I do there is I charge a high rate for an evaluation and 30 days of care managed through an app. So it's a remotely managed platform. They have 24/7 access to me through the app, through a messenger. It has phenomenal demos in the like video demos, written demos, rep ranges, and I evolved the program over the course of 30 days. So it's sort of like a membership model.
Okay, that's interesting. Is that kind of how I know you talk about like how you see the future of how it's consumed, like physiotherapy. Is that how you kind of see it, or where's your head at when you think about the future?
When I think about the future, I think at least in the short term, I do imagine the subscription model as being the primary way to access our information. So through Counter-Strike and through my, the in-person locations, for Counter-Strike, for example, people are actively signing up for a membership. It says subscribe now. It's like, $250 or $450 a month. And I have a lower demonetized version at $150 a month for access to my programming. And it's actually programming. It's not just like a PDF that everybody gets. Like through the different levels, they get different levels of customization, either just through a questionnaire, a one-time video conference, or a video conference more often. But essentially what people are paying for is a month of service in exchange for a rate. I think that's the only way to break the fee-for-service model, which is then always centric on the actual service provided. So if you're charging $100 a session, what you do in that session then is going to be deemed as the as the actual product, not the relationship and not the end goal of the working relationship with you.
Mm-hmm. I think that's advantageous from several fronts. One place I can see that really being beneficial is around expectations from when the client comes in, because if you know you're going to have a long evaluation, lots of times to meet with somebody, but then they're helping you program for the next month, and they're kind of you know it's going to be more of a guidance role. You know that you're going to be putting in work in that process. So I feel like the nice thing about that model is that you have to do that. It sets those expectations right away. So it's impossible for people to then become dependent on the provider.
It doesn't exist. I mean,
Yeah.
it shifts. I'm a huge fan of the Story Brand book, and it talks about how you have to make your client the hero and not you. And in this role, I'm the guide, the client's the hero, and I'm guiding them along the way to fixing themselves and empowering them to take care of themselves. And I have really blunt conversations. Somebody comes in, they're 60 pounds overweight and their knees hurt. And I say, like, listen, the best thing I could do is actually help you lose some weight. Like, would you be open to me helping with that? And obviously it takes some rapport, and you need to lead up to that and feel out what's the right way to deliver that. And I will give them, knee exercises. You have to give them you have to give them something that addresses the local symptomology and works on the local biomechanical level to a degree if there's a real component. But the reality is, her doing a 7-day food log, uploading it in the app, it's going to be the best thing for her needs. So it allows me to do whatever the hell I think is going to deliver that person. It sets up these, pretty amazing coaching relationships.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like you hit a certain, niche of people? Because I could see that definitely, that's something I would love to do. But do you feel like there's a lot of people out there, just thinking of some people that I've seen come through the clinic, that would you try to explain that to them and they would not be down for that. And you would most likely just would you just lose out on that person almost and not treating them? Or would you try and, encourage them to adopt this model, or how do you go about that situation?
Right. So, 100% is not for everyone, but when you build a business, when you try to build it for everybody, you build it for no one.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the clients that you're thinking of were attracted to this model that we're talking about, the in-clinic 100% supervised model, which isn't wrong. There's always going to be a place for that. But you're attracting the people that care about that. There is the stats. I mean, it's 7 to 10% of people will actually see a PT this year, who have an injury. That's so low. The reality is that there's, from 10% probably to 40 or 50%, there are people that have an ache or a pain, but literally wouldn't walk down the block to go to the doc there. But if you're conveniently located inside of a gym or accessible via a video conference, which is how I see a fair number of clients too, they would then take advantage of it. And now all of a sudden you're attracting people to that. So I'm attracting the right clients who fit this into their time and value view of the world.
How do you think I know you don't maybe have to, everyone has to adopt this way of treating, let's say from a physio perspective, but how do you think we start to push this to have a transition in how we deliver care? Because I can see how people would be resistant to this, just thinking of other people that I've talked to the profession, or you just see the state of the profession online or at conferences and all of that stuff. How do you think we push this?
Again, I think it can't happen until the monetization strategy changes, because factually right now, even if on clinically, anybody who thinks that they have to feel something, they're going to immediately be like, you can't fix anybody through this method. And I'll gladly show them the reviews and tell them that they're wrong for this population. I'm not saying somebody who's post-op spinal fusion can do this. I would tell them you need to go see somebody in person. There's a right client for this. But so you take the people who you think they need to feel something on the ongoing basis to be able to fix people, move them out. Then you take the business owner who might be open to this, but one less visit is less revenue to them. So how do you create a hybrid, let's say, version of this where somebody comes in once a week and you use the app to manage them at home? Because the reality is compliance on home exercise programs is so low that it's pretty much useless. there's like a 3% to 5% compliance rate long-term on home exercise programs. So if we were to do once a week in person and to use the app, which has accountability features, which lets you know when somebody did it or not, to actually do things daily, the results would be tremendous because, as you know, to change the human body, it's consistency, not intensity. So if you do something a little 5 days a week, it's going to exponentially trump something that does twice or 3 times a week, for 4 weeks or something like that.
So you're kind of preparing almost for the future of a change in monetization of how like physios consumed, basically. Like, do you think that that's going to change? I mean, I know we're in different countries too, right? Like the US and compared to Canada, but do you think that that's going to change in the short term, the long term, or?
Yeah, I think that like if you look at macro cycles of almost all industries, there's a period of consolidation, and then it breaks apart, and then we have a period of small business exploration. And right now we're at the peak or the beginning of the tail end of consolidation over here in the United States, at least, where, this happened in the 90s with Health South. Health South was one of the largest physical therapy providers, I think, in the world. And their CEO's in jail right now. So, he might be out, I'm not sure, but he was in jail. And almost all of the people that I looked up to in the start of my career worked for Health South, left, said, fuck this, can't do it anymore, created their own businesses. Then a couple of those got momentum, started to get bigger like we did. And then they made a choice to either start consuming other businesses because that's the faster growth rate. And then once you bring in venture capital money, then you no longer are in control of your own product, which then allows things to spiral out of control. And at some point, the whole thing liquidates, and then the whole process starts over again. Yeah. It's like the fire in the Serengeti. It's like the things grow, lightning comes, fire, it all burns out. It just keeps happening over and over again. It's in every industry.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's something me and Will have had conversations about. And I think like the way that people are consuming all types of services are changing, right? Like that direct to consumer thing it's our whole world now, right? So I think like building niche environments or kind of the thing that you're trying to do as a profession is important for people to start doing, because when that model does collapse, which most likely it's going to happen, like people are going to want to go somewhere. And I think let's just say the new age or younger generation that's coming up are totally on board with consuming services that way. That's all that they really know.
Right.
So most people are not going to have a problem with seeing you for an evaluation and then following up online for follow-up sessions and following like online coaching and stuff like that. And they're going to want to go somewhere. So I think it's awesome that you're doing that. And that's something that me and Will, I think, want to try to do as well. Because I think it really is the future for us.
I agree. Yeah, I think that is the next step. It'll continue to evolve from there. I actually want to hit on one thing I forgot to go back to. Remember the whole my anti-sexy thing?
Yeah.
So I was recently invited to do a pitch contest, and the pitch contest was I was chosen as one of 5 entrepreneurs who have new and interesting startups in the health and fitness space. So Counter-Strike was chosen. That alone was, an honor and something I really was proud of. And then within that, we had to all pitch in front of a room full of investors, and we're talking like one of the co-founders of like New York Sports Club, investors of the Mirror, which is like this new age, like next level home exercise thing, like Peloton, but different. So there's like big time money in the room, and we all pitch in competition. We had 6 minutes or less to get across, the vision, who I am, the team, monetization strategy, market analysis, 5-year financial projections. And I nailed the presentation. I actually hired, you'll see me hashtag leave nothing to chance on Counter-Strike all the time. I live my life by that. So I hired a vocal coach. I went to a sports psychologist. I treated this thing like I was going to the Super Bowl. And I nailed the performance, and I came in last. I came in 5 of 5. And the reason why, I actually had somebody say oh, you did a really good job presenting that. Idea just isn't sexy. And I was just like, okay. And then go to the next person, and they'd be like, great concept. I think your niche might need it. It's too small of a market. Next person, not sexy. Got the not sexy thing, I think, 3 times. And what really that represented was the whole need to rebrand, meaning even with what I felt was an extreme rebrand of physical therapy services in the room full of investors that are used to truly direct to consumer businesses, truly, non-referral based service, like somebody who's going to buy the mirror. The mirror has to be, in their words, sexy. It can't be a logical purchase only. There needs to be logical and emotional. And I think I still, even with like, I look progressive within the PT community, when compared to like the health and fitness world as a whole, I'm still just kind of like in the middle. Like, oh, that's a nice idea, but I don't see it being a $10 million idea. That's essentially what they are said. So two things. Well, I'm going to prove them wrong. Obviously, I was really grateful to get that kind of, that kind of inspiration this early, to be told no. Because like, honestly, if you don't get told something like that earlier on, you're probably not working in some sort of anything unique. And two, it really just speaks to the fact that we all need to rebrand, because if they're thinking that and giving that to me, the consumers that are interacting with our brands are feeling that, even if they're not saying it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's a good position to sit in though, because if you're already thinking about this rebrand idea and trying to take this and put it into the profession, like we're behind, but you're just going to be out in front of the rest of the profession, which when things turn, they're going to have to go somewhere, right? And you already have a head start. So
yeah, no, the goal is to lead by doing. It's there's a lot of consultants out there that are making their living actually just doing consulting and not doing the actual business that they say that they're actually can teach you. I think there's only one exception to that. It's Danny Mattei. So he's somebody who actually is like so blunt about like, hey, this is how I built this business. Here's what I did to build it. Like, this is what I do. That's so different than most of our profession, which is like, oh shit. Like, talk about dollar to time wise. Like, I would make more money just going on consulting, like a binge, but I do it very small on the side because I love it. It's fun. But the reality is, like, I don't want to sell a webinar of XYZ. I actually want to like help a fighter win a fight with a skill set that I went to school for, but I also have a passion for business. Mm-hmm. So my goal has always been to like lead by doing, and not jump ship and pretend like some people out there who are crushing it financially, teaching people how to create online businesses, who have never run an online business at all. It just drives me nuts.
So learn by doing and be sexy.
Yep. That's my the summary here.
The last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Frank, is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything that you want to get out before we wrap up?
Just everybody should go follow the Level Up Initiative. So that's another project that I'm involved with.
Yes.
Zach Gabor is one of the most passionate, actually is the most passionate PT I've ever met. He says that I was the second, and I don't think I even come close to him. So the guy is hell-bent on making a movement, making this movement matter. And I've been involved in the company for just over a year now, and it is unbelievable the progress, like on the ground. It's not just a social media thing. Like, we have schools that are changing curriculums based off of the way that he and the Level Up team is presenting this information. So to really be at the forefront, I strongly recommend you apply for a mentorship at Level Up. It's completely free. And it will always, the mentorship side of things will always be free on that side of the business.
Yeah, for sure. We can attest to that. We've been through the Level Up, like the first wave of mentors, and we've definitely had conversations with Zach, and we agree. I don't think anyone can match his intensity and passion. No. I don't know how Steph deals with him on a daily basis, Scott.
Yeah, she gets the gold medal.
She does.
She gets the medal of honor on this one.
Yeah. Awesome. Frank, if you just want to let people know where they can find more about you, about your about Counter-Strike, and anything else that you want people to know about, let them know right now.
Yep, sounds good. Instagram's always best, Frank_Benedetto. That's my personal. You'll see just me, who I actually am. I don't, it's just my actual personal Instagram. But feel free to reach out. Always love helping other PTs, especially if they're trying to get started in business. Like, help find your niche and help get you going I love seeing people quit their jobs. Last podcast I was on, I pretty much just told everybody to quit their jobs all the time. And like, stop pretending that there's a future in this corporate infrastructure. Like, they've put together a ladder that you're pretending to climb without realizing that you don't give a shit about getting to the top of that. Like, regional manager, clinic manager of some sort of chain that delivers shit care. Like, quit your job while you're young and go figure out, how to make money off doing your passion. If you know any competitive combat athletes, send them over to Counterstrike_combat sports. So that would be hugely helpful to get me going here.
Awesome. Frank, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it. We know you got a lot going on.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate it.
You're in the midst of traveling in beautiful Rochester, New York. But but thank you. And hopefully the fights go well for your athletes this week.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, Frank, we'll talk soon.
Take care.
Bye.